Okay, we're recording. We're good. Well, hello everyone. I can see your faces on one computer, so I can run the presentation in the other computer. So you can all see the Michigan Watercolor 2020 Signature Membership and Great Lakes Fellow slide. Just nod your head. You see it? Okay. Well, then you got to, if you can't see it, then you probably have to move all these people out of the way because I'm showing my screen and it's showing this deck. And so let's get started. So I want to thank you all for participating today or joining us today. We've been working on this for about a year now, from the time that in one of our board meetings, Carol Achusa, oh, I know what I got to do. I got to hide you all so that we can actually see the screen. That's probably a problem. Let's see if I remember seeing that button. Bear with me. Oh, under participants. Yeah. Video panel. That's what I'm looking for. Anyways, if you can see it, we should be good. And I will, it'll be recorded so we can actually see this whole thing. So we started this back at a board meeting, and Carol Achusa brought up that, you know, she says, the last thing, if it's the last thing I do, I'd love to get a signature membership program going. And at the time, Vicki became our historian and took on the challenge. And Vicki, why don't you just tell us about the process a little bit?
It was a very complicated process. I think we were hampered a little bit because we didn't have as many historical records as I had hoped to be able to get my hands on. And so the decision was made to go back 10 years and take a look at anybody who had been in at least 4 exhibitions within the last 10 years. And those would be, if they were members in good standing, they would be our signature members. So 4 shows in the last 10 years, that's a signature member. Now, if a signature member has also participated for at least 3 years, which is a standard 3-year board term on the board, volunteering, then they would also become a Great Lakes Fellow. And since this is our first inaugural class, we have quite a few people who are signature members, and then additional folks who are also Great Lakes Fellows. So Great Lakes Fellows are both signature members and Great Lakes Fellows, if that makes sense. We were hampered again by the amount of historical data that we were able to keep our hands on, but now that we have those records going forward, we're anticipating probably 4 or 5 new people every year will become signature members. So that's exciting for us as an organization. It elevates us to a status comparable to our neighboring states' watercolor organizations, and it's very similar to the way the National Watercolor Society and American Watercolor Society function with their signature members as well. So I'm really excited that I could play a small part in getting this initiative set up so that we could acknowledge those people who are making a commitment to the Michigan Watercolor Society.
Thank you, Vicki. Great job making this all come together. Well, before
I had a lot of help.
Before we get started with the award ceremony, I want to just have a quick meeting and give you all an update on what our plans are going forward for 2021. So at our last call about a month or so ago, we introduced that, you know, we're not giving up on the folks that entered this year's show. So we're going to take all the artwork that was submitted and juried in for the 73rd annual and make it the 74th. So we're combining the 73rd and 74th into one show. It's just going to be the work from the 73rd, but I didn't want to mess up our calendar as far as years in operation and all that kind of stuff as we go through to our 75th annual. So that'll be at Battle Creek, the Art Center of Battle Creek in June. We'll have more detailed dates as we get closer. We just, with the pandemic, we're just not sure how things are going to be open, and hopefully we will be opening next year and can have a normal exhibition process. So, and I talked to the juror Carolyn Latanison, and she's willing to do a workshop for us at the Art Center of Battle Creek, you know, a few days before the opening of the exhibition. So we'll work those details out so that we can take advantage of what we did this year. We also want to do, you know, just like I did 2 years ago, we had another show just to kind of, you know, bring awareness to the people that, you know, volunteered their time. We did the President Emeritus show 2 years ago in Dearborn. I'm working with the Black Box Gallery, and they built a new coffee shop, if you will, in closer to the downtown West Dearborn. Really nice place. And they're willing to host a show for us. And it's a lot slower than, or smaller than the place that they had further in the neighborhood, and probably could hold about 20 paintings. So what we thought was that we would have an online member show next year where everyone submits a painting, and we'll post it online as a group show. And then we'd have Grace Sierra from Wayne State jury that show and pick the top 20 pieces to actually hang at the Black Box coffee shop and gallery in Dearborn. So that is the plan for next year. So we'll have the annual at Battle Creek, and then in the fall we'll do something with Black Box for a show of our members. So I hope that keeps everybody engaged and wanting to paint, knowing that you know, they're not submitting, they weren't submitting into an annual show, but will submit for just a member show. So everyone will get a painting into the member show, and then Grace will select the top 20 to be in this physical show at the Black Box Gallery. We have a new membership.
So can I?
Yes.
Can I say something? The new Black Box Gallery is actually pretty neat. It's just less than half a block off of Michigan Avenue, and at night it's lit up inside. Tons of windows, and so when it's lit, the artwork glows from the inside of the building, and it's a really unique venue. So I'm kind of excited to see what our members' artwork looks like inside that new venue. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, it's a brand new place. It looks like a fancy version of a Starbucks, and we have a good relationship with them, so they said, "Yep, let's do it." We have a new membership chair. Rick Goff here in Ann Arbor will be taking care of that once we update the membership form and all that kind of stuff. So they'll be taking over for me, so I don't have to do it. Even though it's been really worthwhile for me to see everybody on the membership roles, where they live, and just get to know the members a little bit by being focused on that. And speaking of membership, it's the 2021 fiscal year, which starts October, is the new year to start membership. So if you're having trouble a few people have mentioned to me having trouble actually trying to use the online process on the form. It's not simple, and what I keep telling everyone is just fill out the form, because we also have the form on our website that you can print and just mail it just like you normally would. So we'll start taking those memberships. We're planning on a fall newsletter in November. We're a little behind schedule. There's been just too many things going on. But if you've got anything that you think our members would appreciate or learn from or whatever, please send it to Dave Jordan. He handles the newsletter for us and does the graphics, and that way we'll get updates going there. And speaking of Dave Jordan, the presentation that you're seeing today basically came from the online catalog that David put together for us. And we'll get that posted on the website after today, as well as I will send that to all the members so they have a copy. I think I can, depending on how large this is, but I can email it to you all, then I will. If not, you'll find it posted on the website. We'll send a link to that as well. But Dave Jordan, thank you. I know you're not on the call today, but you'll hear it in the recording. Travel show for next year. So after the annual at the Battle Creek Gallery, Art Center at Battle Creek, we're going to the Adrian Center for the Arts. And they're taking the pieces of the travel show and the award winners, and they'll be showing them there. But at this point, we don't have any other gallery relationships, or Belinda's been reaching out to every gallery in that general area from Battle Creek, from Lansing, Kalamazoo, other areas, and not getting much.
I'm here, Rocky.
Oh, hey, Belinda, how you doing?
Good. I just wanted to let you know I have left messages, voicemail with all of those museums and galleries. And so I haven't heard back, so I'm going to follow up with them on Monday.
Okay. But again, the point I'm making is that if you have a relationship in galleries or art centers in your community, and again, it doesn't have to be for next year. It could be the following year or the year after, that wherever we decide to have an annual exhibition, we'd like to bring the art to various communities just so they can see the beauty of your work and provide the exposure and provide the culture for the community. So again, if you have a relationship, please let Belinda know so that in the future we can go after them if it's in the general area that we're having an annual exhibition. And our goal is 1 year out of 3, we have the show in the Detroit area. And then the other times we're either heading west or we're heading north, those kind of things, just to kind of keep it around the state, because we are a state organization. So with that, and again, if you have any questions, just send me an email and we can talk about it, or just give me a call. But with that, we're going to start the award ceremony. And, you know, I could have just gone through the slide deck and give you 30 seconds to look at all the paintings, but I wanted to do more than that. I wanted to take excerpts from all these statements. So we asked every artist that's a signature member and a Great Lakes Fellow to give us a statement of their work and their relationship with the MWCS, and so that you know, we can learn from them and learn from the things that they do and where they've come from, their background, those kind of things. So, well, for the next 60 minutes or so, Vicki and I are going to be going through these things and kind of bringing you information about the artists, where they're from, those kind of things. So here we go. So we're starting the signature membership profiles with Mark Bonnet. And in 1972, and I may be talking in third person or first person, so bear with me. In 1972, I graduated from the University of Michigan of Architecture and Design with a major in industrial design. My career began in transportation design and aerospace design, with 3 years teaching design and illustration at the University of Wisconsin at Stout. In 1983, I began working in maritime design and then started my own design consulting firm in 1990. While working on my own paintings through the years, the primary focus has been on botanicals. Mark enjoys the color, form, shape, illusion of depth and space that are different from his consulting work. In the past few years, he has begun working with more landscapes and seascapes. Although he has had 4 botanicals and 1 landscape selected by the MWCS for exhibition in the previous 5 years, he considers this year's entry, Blue Horizon, to be one of his best. Thank you, Mark. Great job. Beverly Booth from Troy, and again, Mark was from Holland, Michigan. I love how we have people around the state that represent this organization. Beverly Booth is from Troy. Like many of Beverly's, many of us, Beverly was attracted to painting at a young age. And I hear that a lot through these statements. A lot of people started very young and got hooked on it. And also there's many of these statements talk about all their awards and accolades. I save that for you to read in their statements. So just to save time and try to give you things that I think maybe you can learn from. She studied art at Kent State University in Ohio, and in the 70s raised a family in Troy, decided to take art classes at the BBAC, which is a reoccurring thing I keep hearing. She was introduced to watercolor and never looked back. After many watercolor classes there for over 10 years with one instructor, she also took many workshops in the US, Canada, and Europe while developing a strong, fun group of art lady friends along the way, one of which was her watercolor instructor. They have done plein air painting together for over 26 years in Maine, Arizona, and Italy. Thank you, Beverly. Jerry Bowman from Kalamazoo, seen his large paintings. I have little formal artistic training except for the introductory class, several workshops, and a 40-year fascination with daily experimentation in watercolor painting. University of Michigan, as a biology major, I became a research scientist for the Upjohn Corporation, signature member to a number of organizations. He has shown in scores of juried national and international shows, including twice in Paris, France, and in China. Uses only Arches paper, Raphael number 6, 8404 brush, 11 brands of the highest quality watercolor paints. His work is notable for its large size, color, and pattern. Dimensionality is an essential element, as is an unusual point of view. Compositions are fluid yet structured. Jerry will focus mainly on cross-cultural concepts of universal design. These include many objects from so-called primitive cultures. As an example of my best work, I offer the original painting, 3 Roses. Thank you, Jerry. Jan Brown. Encouraged by my parents and inspired by a wonderful high school art teacher, I went on to be an art major at Central Michigan University. My venture into watercolor didn't begin until after the death of my husband. I needed to really get back to painting again. My daughter, also an artist, got me into watercolor classes at the BBAA, and has been my joy. The products available now are so wonderful. The addition of textures and stencils and watercolor crayons, pencils, and ink have made watercolor painting far more exciting for me. All in all, watercolor painting has saved my sanity, my self-esteem, my soul. I love it. Yep, therapy, right? Thanks, Jan. Kay Castle from Celine. I don't know how many of you are on her distribution list, but she writes some nice blogs and letters of what she's doing all the time. I'm a studio painter. I concentrate on ideas. and I love mystery. My passion has been to capture the human figure and gesture in drawings. I have hundreds of them, a drawing from live models whenever I can. I often use these figures to interpret my ideas in a mysterious manner in my paintings. My inspiration comes from everywhere, people and places I'm familiar with, mythology, old photographs, memories. I really think the subject find the artist, not the other way around. I've been painting a long time, but only started painting watercolor seriously 20 years ago. In the studio number one, which why did I pick that painting? This is the favorite subject of mine. It has produced many series, one entitled In the Studio, another entitled Illumination. It continues to stir my imagination. Thank you, Kay. Frank Dolan from Rochester Hills. I believe a painting should be based on good drawing with strong creative design elements and gesture and show strong visible brushwork. I'm especially inspired by dramatic light and shadow chiaroscuro effects, lost edges, the diversity of watercolor handling. This includes loose flow, dry brush, color mixing on the paper, and even backwashing. They appear almost out of control, but are really masterful handling. I'm still learning this medium and attempting to control those gratuitous, I can't stop, accidents. At least I know which end of the brush to hold. Thanks, Frank. And thanks for those big words. Janice Dumas from Milford. Janice Dumas has been fascinated with watercolor since she was a teenager in Southeast Michigan. She has worked at exploring the medium, the ways various pigments mix together, then separate after you put them on the page, the way they burst across the paper when you place them in the puddle of water. The thousands of colors you can mix from a palette of 15 colors. Although mostly self-taught, Janice has attended several workshops and a couple of college courses to glean information from other artists and combining the information to use in her own unique way. Janice graduated with a BFA from Wayne State, worked in product design before changing her focus to watercolor painting. An upcoming move to Tawas Bay area can only enhance her inspiration for painting the Great Lakes. The breathtaking views along the circle tour of Lake Superior were the inspiration for Superior Beach Overlook, created from memory and photographic reference, part of a new series. In creating this series encompassing all 5 of the Great Lakes with their varied landscape, Janice hopes to promote awareness of the necessity to protect the important resources we have in the Great Lakes. Great job, thank you. Silence from Kalamazoo. Following high school, I went on to graduate from Kindo School of Art and Design in Grand Rapids. Yeah, there's a number of folks there that graduated from there. After a few years of working as a commercial artist and an architectural illustrator in Kalamazoo, I studied art education at Western Michigan University. I taught art in high school for 9 years and in a government teachers school in Nigeria for 3 years. Having traveled extensively by plane, I look at the earth from a distance, which gives me a new perspective of the land and water formations. This creates challenges in the ordering of shapes, colors, and textures in my paintings. I would like to think that my paintings create the illusion that they have no boundaries, but extend to all the people of the world. Nestled, watercolor done on 300-pound cold press watercolor paper. I started by flooding the wet paper with light colors. After letting that dry, I started glazing it with dark colors until I got the results I wanted. I had in mind a plan which was a memory of a landscape I had seen from my travels. However, the painting turned out better than the image in my memory, so I knew I had something good. Nestled gained for me the signature membership in the American Watercolor Society. Now it's in the permanent collection of the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts. Great job. Thanks, Zach. Cindy Evans from Williamston. My paintings are my reaction to what I see and experience, and they tell my story. I treat each piece differently and try to fit the technique, color choice, design elements to the piece, relating all the components to enhance the mood and the message. I use watercolor because the washes offer many possibilities of putting paint to paper. I use acrylic, ink, collage to add interesting textures and other details. Artists have a special gift. I think we all have a unique ability to speak through our work in wonderful ways. Nature's Way 2 is one from my Monarch series paintings. In this series, I use visual storytelling to highlight the beauty of this butterfly and its story of transformation, migration, and survival. It is also an example of my tea stain process. My motivation to paint is that I love how water and color move on the paper. The challenge to bring what happens to a successful conclusion and to bring attention to the beauty in nature, sculpture, and the art of storytelling. Thank you, Cindy. Congrats. Daria Felita from Northville. I've been exploring the beauty and complexity of watercolor painting for more than 50 years. Through both formal and informal training, I discovered that painting in watercolor is as much about allowing the art to flow through you as it is about honing your skills. While I paint across many mediums, I lean toward floral stills and landscapes in watercolor. That said, I chose this painting to feature because it's always a unique challenge to do a portrait in watercolor, let alone a portrait of my daughter. The contrast between neutrals and color, strategic shadows, and highlights offer a new perspective on the thoughtfully capturing a face and a mood with love. I joined the Michigan Watercolor Society when I took some workshops with Laura Whiteside's host. She was and is an important influence in my work. I've trained at the American Academy of Arts in Chicago as well as OCC, BBAC, and Val. Thank you. Congratulations.
So this is Vicki. Rocky has asked me to help him with some of this because it's a lot of talking to get through. This is a page for Robert Fionda. Robert says he's from Armada. At this point in his professional career, everything is about the visual message and how best to translate it using the attributes of watercolor. Over the years, I have evolved from a realistic recorder of details and images to someone who wants to paint the suggestion and not the fact. Cruciflora de Cristo is the best painting from a series I call Noir. I consider it a milestone in my artistic journey. The subject matter deals with flora and their suspension in space. I like experimenting with design concepts dealing with movement against a stationary field. But more importantly, the flowers are representational of lives present and past. Regardless of how much we pray, hold, or lock down what is dear to us, everything slowly wilts and withers away in the face of the inevitable. The eroding and ever-changing corners of the square are symbolic of time, while the background suggests a sense of eternity. Beautiful, Robert. Patricia Flynn is from Holland, and she says, through watercolor, I have found the perfect expression of my love of color and design. I began painting watercolors in the fall of 1998 after retirement from a career in teaching. I took an initial class at our local senior center and discovered that I loved becoming an artist. I have taken some workshops and I am involved in a weekly group of fellow painters. Art activities include board member of the Holland Friends of Art, board member and president of the Holland Area Arts Council, Michigan Watercolor Society, Muskegon Museum of Art, the Graham, and Arizona Watercolor Association and American Watercolor Society. The painting that she submitted is titled Chehuligan, Venezia, one of a series of paintings that I have done based on the glasswork of Dale Chihuly. I love the combination of color and design that make up that final composition. Sherry Adams Foster is from West Bloomfield, and she says, after studying biology, literature, acting, and occupational therapy, I finally started to take art classes in 1982. I was prompted by a strong feeling of jealousy whenever someone was introduced as an artist. How come they get to be an artist? Why can't I be an artist too? So began 30 plus years of classes at BBAC in drawing, printmaking, and watercolor. I took workshops with Roland Roycroft, Irving Shapiro, Tony Couch, Stone Warren, and Linda Baker, and others. Weekly classes with Laura Host became a place to experiment, learn, and become inspired. After 5 or 6 years, I started entering shows and selling my work. I have been honored to participate in Michigan Fine Arts, Michigan Watercolor Society, and other venues. Clementines was started after a week of gray winter days. The pattern and vibrant colors of the plate evoked our trip to Italy, which was sunny, warm, and adventurous. Set on our kitchen counter in bright overhead light, it gave me something exciting to work on. I am particularly pleased with how the tile and texture of the oranges came out. It is a favorite because it successfully expresses my intention in painting it. Alice Frank is from West Bloomfield. She says, I am a graduate from the University of Michigan. I have always had an interest in art. I taught many workshops in art for elementary and middle school. I spent a year in Seoul, Korea, and studied art and taught at Seoul National University, and have studied art as well at Cranbrook, BBAC, and privately. In addition to watercolor, which is my primary focus, I have also worked in enamel and fired metals. My piece, The Night Has Made Up My Mind, has an interesting story. It is an especially important piece for me. I began with a blank canvas in front of me and my watercolor palettes without any idea where to begin. Would I go dark with strong colors or light with more calming colors? For some reason, my thoughts went to a more complex piece, and I began with hues of blue-green. An idea of nightscape formed both in my mind and in the canvases. Laura Garcelon is from Howell, a graduate of the Ohio State University. She was raised in Worthington, Ohio. She says, I graduated in 1991 with a degree from the College of Pharmacy. And in addition to raising my 3 children alongside my husband, Cody, I have worked as a pharmacist throughout my career. Although I did not study art until 2005 while I was raising my family, 15 years ago, I picked up my brushes again and started taking painting classes and workshops. Studying design and composition have been essential to my growth as an artist. I have continued learning, and my work in watercolor has evolved. The human form has always interested me. I paint what I experience and what I see in my daily life. My children and their friends were my first subjects. Now my aging parents are often a source of inspiration. I enjoy exploring patterns and color, and am currently learning how to add acrylic marbling to my watercolors. My goal is to create a work that exceeds my expectations and that surprises the viewer. I love the unpredictability of watercolor. Paintings truly take on a life of their own. The Extrovert is one of the paintings that accomplishes this. The colors, patterns, and pose showcase my youngest daughter's fun and feisty personality. Cheryl Gould is from Morley, which is north of Grand Rapids. She spent 30 years as an art educator in Vicksburg, Michigan. Wildflowers and watercolors have always fascinated her, so when it was time to retire, those two interests naturally melded. She says, I was fortunate to attend a workshop with one of my favorite watercolorists, Nita Engel, shortly before retiring. That workshop enabled me to begin to tackle painting the complexity and depth of nature. Native wildflowers became my primary subject because I love spending time in nature finding them and then remembering the scene while recreating it in watercolor. The flower alone is not the subject, but also the habitat. My hope is to share the treasures I find in the woods with those who might not otherwise see or value them. Joyce Grace is from Jackson. She said, I paint in the medium of watercolor in a highly representational, although not always realistic, style. The medium lends itself nicely to control, but it still allows by its very nature for fluidity and transparency. Some works take the form of traditional tabletop still lifes, while others contain multiple images arranged with no limitations of real time or real space. Whatever the subject matter, I continually find the process of creating a joy, a terror, hard work, and magic. The imagery and themes of ancient Greece and Rome have always fascinated me and recur in many of my paintings. Terpsichore, I know I just murdered that word, is my favorite of these pieces. I chose a limited palette and strong circular forms in order to emphasize the movement of the piece. The symbolism of the dance as a metaphor for life, time passing, joys and sorrows, rhythms and music and patterns, all uniting in the dance of life. Shirley Cruz Hathaway is from Macomb. She said, I began exhibiting and winning awards even prior to my BFA and MAE from Wayne State. I also taught watercolor and field studies at Wayne State part-time and have been teaching out of my home studio for over 50 years. While I prefer abstract painting, I cannot give up realism in some of my work. This particular piece is a batik created with watercolor dyes on Japanese rice paper with silk fibers embedded in it. Wax resist is used to keep the lights, and it is ironed off once the work is finished. This method creates a brilliance like no other medium, and if held to the light, it gives the appearance of stained glass. However, it is a very slow process because of the application of hot waxes and wet dyes with both drying periods. This piece, I'll Take My Breath Away, was accepted into the 58th Michigan Watercolor Society travel exhibit in 2005. As a world traveler, I love to capture the ancient feeling of buildings in a more contemporary way without losing the aesthetic quality of the architecture. Shirley has won hundreds of awards for her work.
Thanks, Vicki. My turn to get my voice going again. Robert Hubbock from Clarkston. My introduction to watercolor painting began in 1960 while I was a student at the Art Center School in Los Angeles, California, pursuing a career as an industrial designer in transportation design. Later in my junior year, I took an elective class in watercolor painting with a revered fine artist and painting instructor, the late Paul Sousa. He would send the class out outdoor locations every other week with classroom critiques the week in between. Most locations were along the Southern California coast and also some at inland places that were of special interest. I was hooked. Upon retirement in 2001 from Chrysler, I finally found the quality time to resume painting activities and have enjoyed the honor of having my paintings accepted in 11 MWCS shows since 2009. The painting I chose to feature is a favorite of mine, and it represents one of my major pursuits in watercolor painting during the last 2 decades. It was first shown in 2013 at the American Watercolor Society show in New York. It's titled Flowing Through, and it was also in the 2014 MWCS show. John Hunter from Jansen, which is west of Grand Rapids. Professionally, I've worked as an illustrator, a graphic designer, and an art director in advertising, film, and the internet for national and international corporations since college. I started working in watercolor some 60 years ago. I deviated to other mediums many times, but always found I wound up returning to watercolor. Over the last 25 years, I've been perfecting my skills in fine arts. I selected the painting Zebra 8 as my best painting because, being a realist, with my own adaptation of color is exemplified here. The complexity of the drawing is in a direct contrast to the subtle shift in value in color, creating an image of complete harmony. That's beautiful stuff. Mike Engel, Battle Creek. I studied illustration at Kendall School of Art and Design in my early years, and then proceeded to illustrate books, calendars, greeting cards, posters, and a number of other media over the years. I am currently a self-employed artist, have been for over 30 years. My current creative focus involves painting portraits in watercolor. In my paintings, I strive for a certain amount of realism without sacrificing the crisp, clean brilliance of watercolor. By laying down multiple layers of paint, I'm able to produce deep, brilliant colors that are significant to my painting. I chose the painting titled Izzy as my best painting because I believe it portrays how watercolor can highlight several textures and colors in one painting. For example, the dog has a different type of hair from the coarse to soft and fluffy results, resulting in numerous textures. Beautiful painting. And we'll be doing a special presentation with Michael at the Battle Creek event next year. And I won't give it away, but make sure you're there. Diane Benoit Jamiefield from Imlay City. I am a fine arts scholarship grad from the Center for Creative Studies in Detroit. Teaching art for over 40 years, founding member of a portrait painting group that has been together for over 25 years. My first love is watercolor. I consider it my partner in creating art. Watercolor can achieve luminosity and a light like no other media. This media fits my personality, being spontaneous and emotional. My quest is to create paintings that change the world and how we will view the subject I've painted. Just to let you know, I've taken excerpts from their statement, so there's more detail on all of these slides about their process. So enjoy. James Johnson from Western Michigan. I was educated at Kendall College of Art and Design, Art Institute of Chicago. After an enlistment in the Navy, I worked as a freelance graphic designer and illustrator for 30 years. Since retirement in 2003, I've been painting landscapes, still lifes, portraits, figure work, mostly in watercolor. I presently live and paint in Western Michigan. I love art that is loose and spontaneous. I always start by painting directly from life without much preliminary work. The only prep work is a rough pencil sketch done directly onto my watercolor paper, which I don't erase. If possible, I'd rather not know what the subject matter is going into it before I arrive on the scene. This way, the excitement is always fresh, and that translates into pure creative energy. 2 years later, I was sorting through these sketches, decided what to keep and what to pitch, and I came across the woman in the bathing suit. I suddenly visualized out of nowhere a huge fish in the background, which energized me, and I promptly painted it in the background. Spontaneity. Thank you, James. Sue Kowalik from Washington. I had a traditional education in art technique while earning a BFA degree. I've been fortunate to live in Michigan, where it has been a strong heritage of experimental use of watercolor and of brushing the boundaries of media and subject matter. Of Mice and Pain is a work that demonstrates several watercolor techniques. Watercolor painting was applied in pours through various papers. In recent years, I have made the attempt to include more personal content as well as visual interest in my work. I've seen Marilyn Dewiskus influence in this painting. Debbie LaRoche from Bay City. I have a bachelor's degree in fine art and painting and drawing from Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My work in all mediums is inspired by nature, light, and patterns created by it. I use line to convey the beauty and the power of nature, and shadow to suggest the subtle shapes and patterns we often take for granted. Whether working in color or black and white, my intention is not to copy, but to highlight, suggest, and to encourage the viewer to take a closer look. I chose this painting because it reflects my love of line and shadow. I deliberately painted it using a limited palette to have the focus on the nest and the shadow instead of the color being used. I am fascinated by the construction of this often overlooked subject. Beautiful. Sandy Meyer from Coopersville, Michigan. The Claude Monet quote, "When you go out to paint, try to forget what subject you have before you. Merely think, here's a little square of blue, here's an oblong pink, here's a streak of yellow, and paint it just as you see it, looking as it looks to you." I am constantly telling myself it's not an object to be labeled by the left side of the brain. It's simply a shape of color next to another shape of color. If you have ever put together a jigsaw puzzle, you'll understand how I work. The more complex the subject is, the better. That and how the light plays with the subject are what triggers the desire to paint, and always about the challenge. My paintings are in several collections, including a number of museums. Thank you, Sandy. Jennifer Robinson currently lives in Seattle, Washington. I'm an anthropologist of Japan by profession, although I've had also pursued a parallel track as an artist working in and across several mediums. I have an insatiable curiosity that extends to all forms of artistic and aesthetic expression, but I'm especially influenced by contemporary Japanese printmaking and ceramicists. My relationship with Japan is substantial and integral to all my identity. I was fortunate to have spent childhood and early teen years in Tokyo area with my artist parents, and I've lived in Japan for over 20 years, traveling there at least once a year. I retired from the University of Michigan in January 2020 and now live in Seattle. I've had the honor of showing my work in 6 MWCS exhibitions Most of these pieces were in the travel show as well. Garden in 2012, shown here as part of a series I completed in the wake of the March 2011 trifold disaster in Northeast Japan. A month later, I visited Japanese friends whose hometown had been demolished. The gardens are a stylized representation of the sludge, the rock-filled rice paddies, and fields left in the wake of the tsunami. In all of my artwork, I wish to create interesting forms and compositions that work visually and interpretively on several registers. Thank you. Stacy Rose from Stacy's a Saginaw watercolor artist, received an associate's degree in applied arts photography from Lansing Community College with a focus on figures and portraits. Discovering the joy of watercolor painting in her 40s after visiting a local exhibition and falling in love with a painting of glowing glass jars by Bill Breaker, another MWCS member. As president of the Saginaw Area Water Media Artists, she strongly believes in advocating for and supporting the arts and culture in her community and has served on the Art Council of Saginaw Art Museum, past chair of the Great Lakes Bay Plein Air Festival and Exhibition. Over the years, Stacy's painting style has evolved from trying to capture the likeness of her subjects to trying to create mood or a feeling. She chose sitting in the sunshine because it reflects Stacy's long-standing love for portraiture. Realistic, yet done in a painterly style, she uses bright washes of color, letting the watercolor mix and mingle, creating beautiful effects and edges.
Susan Semenik, currently residing in Indianapolis, Indiana. She's the current MWCS board co-chair for exhibitions. Susan began her career as a biology teacher near Indianapolis. During that lone painting class in college, her professor attempted to persuade her to switch majors and study painting in the fine arts program. She declined and instead focused on teaching youth about the wonders of the natural world. Once she did start painting, Susan chose to use a limited color palette. She draws inspiration from the people she encounters as well as nature. Her subtle washes of color, gentle gradients, and purposeful splatters allow her to create works that not only reveal her love for painting, but also her talent for capturing portraits of adults and children. Portraits and figures are my favorite, said Susan. I will see a face in a public place sometimes, like at a wedding, and I will instantly know that I want to paint it. It is so easy to paint a subject that I am inspired by. Julie Strabel is from Grosse Pointe. I attended the University of Michigan Architecture and Design School, where Bill Lewis was my fabulous watercolor teacher. Years later, working on a master's degree from Wayne State, I needed a painting for the next day's class. I looked up at the detergent shelf above my washing machine, and there was a Penn tennis ball can among the soap and bleach, a unique design. It was the first painting that had been accepted into the Michigan Watercolor Show. I like to work experimentally and totally use different subjects, wet on wet paint incorporated with unique and natural artifacts, pulling and pushing, including handmade paper, which I learned to make from Charmaine Keptour. Rebirth has lots of wet on wet paint with pulled net. It is very organic and moving. I love using Liquitex Gloss Heavy Gel for gluing. Rebirth is interpreted differently by every person who sees it. Viana Zabo from Romeo. I have been a pastel and oil painter for about 30 years, but found it was too easy to correct mistakes in those mediums. So I turned to watercolor to teach myself discipline. What surprised me was that my best work happens in watercolor when I do not try to control every aspect of the painting. The medium has taught me the discipline of planning by reserving the lights, but it has also taught me to let go. My favorite watercolor painting I have exhibited with the MWCS is a portrait of my husband titled Gratitude. I was having trouble finding a model, and then my newly retired husband came to my rescue. Ron Teachworth is from Rochester Hills. He says, I am submitting Lipstick, which won an award in 2010 and remains one of my favorite watercolor paintings. The art of watercolor reminds me of John Singer Sargent, Winslow Homer, Georgia O'Keeffe, Paul Klee, and Edward Hopper. I am fond of working with the transparency of pigment on a variety of papers and the subtlety and gradation of the paint's viscosity. I am reminded that the general term water media refers to any painting medium that uses water as a solvent, including collage on the paper matter. In recent years, I have used paper images of my work inside the more substantial image, where both originate from water pigment on paper. I have always enjoyed and respected MWCS, their process, venues, and their four-color catalog. I think it is important to recognize all of the folks over the years who have volunteered a great deal of time in making this exhibition a prestigious event.
Speaking of catalogs, I just received them today, and we'll be mailing them out to everyone that submitted a painting in the 73rd annual exhibition, along with our signature and Great Lakes Fellow certificates. I have those as well, so they'll be going out in the next few weeks.
Donna Thibodeau is from Novi, and she says, my degree is in science. I was a registered histotechnologist for 40 years. This work was done as an art and a science. I prepared microscopic slides for a doctor to view and diagnose. Many techniques and stains were required working with dyes using an eye for color and small muscle techniques. This is the most comfortable way for me to do artwork today, working in a familiar way. As I mature, I am becoming more experimental and not such a purist. I work with transparent watercolor in a detailed, realistic style. I sometimes pour, glaze, or splash it. It is a wonderful medium that allows the white paper underneath the paint to glow and peek through, showing white objects and areas. My favorite painting is one in memory of my mother-in-law, Jean, who left me beautiful remnants of her life and collections. She was from Scotland and carried on the tea tradition. I have teacups from generations of her family, as well as a silver tea set. Also, her beloved Waterford vase and damask cloth. I snuck in a silver spoon from my side of the family, and my flowers showing a connection between the families. I call the painting Before Tea. Theodore Vassar is from Monroe. Over the past 5 years, I have been exploring the many complexities of transparent watercolor as a way of moving in the direction of abstract painting. During the 60s and 70s, I painted large abstracts on canvas. The 80s and the early 90s saw me move toward realism and wildlife to satisfy my need to explore new venues. Now that we have moved into a new century, I find that I have come full circle in releasing my creative juices to produce a personal statement in abstract imagery. I have always been fascinated by watercolor and its transparent quality, but for me, that was not enough. I felt watercolor should be pushed to its limit through continuous exploration and play in order to achieve a multitude of accidental and planned textural effects. Theodore has taught art at Monroe County Community College for the past 37 years. Pamela Wilburn is from Diamonddale. My inspiration as an artist usually begins with Mother Nature. The brilliant colors that never seem to exist in a tube of paint, the contrast of light against dark blue shadows, the subtle color changes of a gray, snowy day at early morning, the mood, the feeling, the immensity of it, and the microscopic details. I love to paint both in plein air and in my studio. I love plein air because of the fast pace, the spontaneity, and the ever-changing challenges that Mother Nature presents. I hold a bachelor's degree in art education and have taught in both public and private schools in Michigan. Before teaching, I spent many years as a graphic artist. In addition to my formal education, I have studied with many internationally acclaimed watercolor artists in order to hone my artistic skills.
Great job, Vicki. We got through the inaugural class signature members. So congratulations to all of you that have gotten this award over the last 10 years. You've been in at least 4 shows and some even more than that. So congratulations to all the signature members. And I know we keep doing this every year. It'll be awesome, because I know that there's a number of people that are like one show acceptance away from getting their signature membership. So we look forward to that. So what's next is the Great Lakes Fellow Award. So we've learned from some of our jurors that they have these fellow type things and didn't know quite what that meant. Well, Vicki did the research, and it meant that beyond getting your work in a number of shows for that organization or that society, they also volunteered their time and completed their commitment to being on the board, whatever term that was. And in our case, it's at least 3 years on the board. And as I read some of these statements, I found out that, there's people that have been on the board for 5, 10, 15, if you've heard Linda Mendelson, she was our historian for 20, 30 years. So it goes to a number of people that have, and again, the focus here has been over the last 10 years, and we'll talk about something beyond that at the end of this presentation. So I want to start with Ed Baranski. And Ed was our membership chair for a while when I first started, and he currently lives in Arizona. And he goes on to say, I inherited a lot of my creativity from my family, and it was nurtured through the years in grade school through high school. After high school, self-doubt had me give up my art for a number of years, but the desire to create remained. A chance encounter with a workshop that used collage as a tool gave my desire to create an open door to go through. I took a collage workshop in BBAC, or BBAA, then another in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That led to a watercolor class that really encouraged me to take bigger chances with my work. My instructor and classmates became great friends and continue to encourage me in my art. The piece I've chosen for this exhibition is titled The Ladies Who Lunch. This is a water media piece combining watercolor and acrylic. I loved creating this piece, and it's a great example of who I am as an artist. It incorporates the different styles that I've worked in, as well as bringing a bit of dark humor into play. So you'll have to read that when you see this statement. Diane Chincherik, who now lives in Florida. She enjoyed a successful career in advertising and design, and for more than 30 years as a graphics designer, art director, and creative director. She has mentored many artists, developing their creativity, honing their design skills, and teaching effective use of contrast and color. She is a signature member of the National Watercolor Society, the Florida Suncoast Water Society, and served on the board of Michigan Watercolor Society for more than 15 years before making Florida her permanent home. One of my favorite paintings from MWCS exhibitions is The Fire Within. When I began this painting, I knew that yellow would be the dominant color. What I did not know is that it would eventually capture an unrest I was struggling with that slowly evolved and sprung to life as I let it develop. Beautiful. I always loved your work, Diane. Marilyn DeWiskus, currently in Tennessee. In our coming up newsletter, she is going to be writing a series of articles for us. We had her in a show last year, and she was so excited that we got her fired up again. So she has a lot to say. Look forward to that. Flattening the Curve is a timely yet historic image prompted by life during the coronavirus pandemic. Since I believe art is life and life is art, it is my responsibility as an artist to address such a topic, although it is far from the beauty often associated with watercolor painting. The painting developed with two sections. The first panel was launched with water poured through paper towel or Kleenex files to create textures on the lush hills of Middle Tennessee. As you goes on to talk about the section on the right, that pinkish section is basically what you see with some of these images of the coronavirus and how it spreads, along with a image of a mask as a symbolic mask to prevent that. She completed an MFA study at the University of Chicago, which ignited her interest in painting content. She continued painting research during 15 residencies and 22 grants. Marilyn has taught many in the Detroit area in her 50+ years as an artist. Carol Everett from Saline. She was our membership chair a few years back. I enrolled in Michigan State University as an art major. After marriage and raising 2 kids, I took few watercolor classes at the Ann Arbor Art Association, returned to painting, and from there I hired a mentor and also enrolled in 3 seminars of watercolor classes only at the Eastern Michigan University. Became a board member, as well as joined for Michigan Watercolor, as well as joining the Chelsea Painters and other groups. I started submitting my artwork to exhibitions. I then started submitting my artwork to exhibitions. My greatest thrill came when my first attempt at a still life was accepted in the MWCS exhibition. I still consider it my best work as it captured all of my painting goals: composition, hierarchy, contrast, value, etc. Through vibrant watercolor painting, I explored 2 or 3 dimensional space by juxtapositioning multiple flat planes with realistic organic forms, man-made objects. The finished work is vivid and slightly off balance, with no static elements that seem to move between multiple planes of view. Jan Filarski from Ray, Michigan. Variety, strong design, and experimentation are important in my work. I notice shape and color in all the world. I stop and take pictures of shape between tree branches, etc., that caught my attention. I received a BA from Wayne State University and an MA in painting and pottery from West Chester University, in Pennsylvania. I taught art in a junior high school outside Philly until I moved back to Michigan. I chose Galactic Mechanisms number 8 as my best water media painting because it won Best of Show in our 2016 exhibition in Jackson, Michigan. the workshop by our juror Bob Bobick. I began with a coating of water, gesso, and acrylic medium mixed, spread all over one side of the watercolor paper. I drew into that thin buttermilk consistency with the wooden end of a paintbrush, let it dry. Any paint I added would fall into the grooves, and unless the paint was thick, you could always look closely and find the drawing. She has always done these really experimental pieces, at least the ones I've seen, and have always been, I think she's gotten in every show she's submitted her artwork, so congrats. Catherine Hara, talk about a board member that was a board member, held a number of positions, and then came back to help me. So I appreciate that, Catherine, from Beverly Hills, Michigan. I obtained my BFA from Wayne State University with a focus in fiber arts. Although I devolved into tapestry and rye rug weaving for some years, these activities, the results were not to my liking. After a career in information technology, I resumed my artistic pursuits with watercolor classes at Paint Creek Center for the Arts and the BBAC. The painting I chose to have included in this catalog, Amelia, is a favorite of mine for a number of reasons. It's part of a series including people and their cats, inspired by the animal rescue adoptions my husband and I facilitate and photograph over the years. I have several of the Board of Michigan Watercolor Society. I have served on the board of the Michigan Watercolor Society on and off over a decade, and I'm a member of the Birmingham Society of Women Painters. I'm especially proud to be founding member of the Sisters of the Brush Artist Critique Group. The honor of being in the inaugural class to receive the MWCS signature status, let alone a Great Lakes Fellow, exceeds anything I could ever have imagined for my artistic career. You deserve it, Catherine. Thank you. Carol Achusa, Grosse Pointe Farms. You guys can thank her for these awards as well. I developed a new palette of triads which eliminates secondary colors, white and black. This exemplifies in my painting Topsy-Turvy, done on the old wharf in Nantucket. I was enamored by the colliding shapes of fallen buildings. I used transparent triads and washes and glazes to show contrast and value and enhance the luminosity of luminous colors. I joined the faculty of the Grosse Pointe War Memorial and began instructing at their art center. I enjoy the MWCS and the Detroit Society of Women Painters and Sculptors. The encouragement which I received from friends in these organizations and from my students of 50 years helped me grow as an artist. I see painting as an accumulation of my experience. It may be said that I begin every day by trying to paint the magic. Thank you, Carol. Ann Loveland from Bloomfield Township. The still life is, for me, an approach with which I can symbolize everything I want to express in paintings, from panoramics to relationships. When I conjure up a landscape, I see it in terms of still life arrangements of elements and colors. When I paint a portrait, I see elements that symbolize the person that I see. Family treasures seem to find a natural place in my arrangements, perhaps because family is the basis of my life. The still life allows me more opportunities for individual expression. It is more than a landscape or a portrait because I'm able to create an environment with endless possibilities. Thank you, Ann. Congrats. Joyce Mankey. I love working with watercolor. Use bright colors, especially using color and design. Particularly, I like to include abstract designs in my art. I try to combine realism with abstract, changing it to work into a pleasing and rewarding result. I've taken many classes at the BBAC with talented teachers and learned and listened to their instructions. Found there always something I can incorporate into my work. I've been a member of Michigan Watercolor Society for quite some time. Joined and found that they needed a membership chair. I volunteered as I knew very few of the members and thought, why not? As I've heard nothing but good things about the society. I try to enter the annual every year, sometimes accepted, sometimes not. Saw a lot of venues I would never have visited if not for MWCS shows opening around the state. Even had one or two accepted pieces for the travel show. Yeah, you got it, Joyce. Sometimes you get in, sometimes you don't, but the exposure is great. Okay, honey. I think you're muted. I can't. Let me take it. I couldn't hear you. Okay. Hold on, and I think you'll be right with us. Almost there.
Okay, you should be able to hear me now.
Yes, there you are.
Zoom has this 40-minute limit and then it kicks me out. So sorry about that, everybody. Okay, this is Rocky Pisto from Ann Arbor. As the current president of the Michigan Watercolor Society, Rocky is very proud to be in the first class of the MWCS signature members, as well as a Great Lakes Fellow. Rocky has spent 6 years on the board. This was something that he was not expecting and as we started down the process, but he is honored to be a part of this esteemed group of artists. Rocky says, I have been fortunate to be in 5 annual exhibitions in the last 10 years. As Joyce Mankey said, it is always fun to see new galleries and museums across the state and learn about the art community in those areas. Since the 1970s, Rocky's love for the abstract elements of nature has found expression in water-based media. Working with watercolor's unexpected results allows him to produce unique, spontaneous works. Building layer upon layer, balancing color, tone, depth, and motion is similar to creating a symphony. And if you would watch him paint, you would know that. His brush literally dances. I am not afraid to take chances and go big, he says, with paintings as large as 4 by 8 to expand the brush stroke and fill the room elicits a very emotional response. As a member of MWCS since 1976, I want to thank all the artists that crossed my path and have made a difference in my career as an artist. I love to work with all water media and will often combine crayon, watercolor, ink, and gesso, watching to see what is revealed on the surface. blue cloud cover from the 69th annual exhibition is an example of that experimentation. Thank you, Rocky. Marilyn Thomas is from Warren, and she says, I earned a bachelor's degree in art education and fine arts. My interests extended into ceramics, weaving, sculpture, jewelry, and especially batik, which I exhibited in the Ann Arbor Art Fair in the early 1970s. In more recent years, my focus has changed to photography and watercolor. For decades, our species has been systematically severing its roots to the earth, our natural habitat and the wellspring of our life and spirit. I find that spending time outdoors, becoming familiar with local habitats, flowers, and animals, photographing them and then depicting them in watercolor and oil paint helps me to feel at one with my source. I've chosen this particular painting as my best because of the problems encountered in portraying both the sparrow and the sharp and fuzzy areas of the thistle. Both birds and thistles have sharp edges, easily done in watercolor, and soft, fuzzy areas that are more difficult. It was fun combining both techniques to give the viewer a real feeling of reality. Beautiful. Christine Unwin from West Bloomfield. This painting was juried into the National Watercolor Society show in 1995, won a prize in the New England Watercolor Show, and was juried into the Michigan Watercolor Show when the show was displayed at the DIA. I have been a member of the Michigan Watercolor Society since the 1970s. My schooling in painting began when I was in college. I took a design class and art for the classroom teacher at Western Michigan University. Later, I took life drawing and color theory at Eastern Michigan University. In 1984, I started a workshop business called Creative Art Workshops. I brought in nationally known artists to teach workshops. As a result, I have studied with over 40 of the top watercolorists in the country. I myself have taught workshops all over the USA and Europe. Lovely. Laura Whiteside's host from Birmingham. Whiteside's host received a BFA from the University of Michigan Architecture and Design School, majoring in painting, including watercolor, William Lewis, and ceramics. After taking watercolor classes for 13 years at the BBAC, 7 years with Electra Stamilos, she began to teach experimental watercolor classes there and has continued doing so for 27 years. In 1987, when a friend started a co-op art gallery, Laura decided to join the gallery roster. She is one of the 2 original members still in the Lawrence Street Gallery and is currently the president. Laura has been active in the Michigan Watercolor Society starting in 1986 with encouragement from Electra Stamilos. She went on the board from 1999 to 2018 and held positions of social chair, travel chair, membership chair, president, and exhibition chair. This painting, Tour de France, 30 by 38, for a demonstration for action painting, she painted to a rousing symphony with wax, masking fluid, watercolor crayons, and then the paint. She said, I liked the motion in it and was happy it was included in the annual MWCS exhibit in Traverse City. Kent Wojecka is from Empire, which is a little bit south of Traverse City and a little bit more west. Over my career as a licensed builder, remodeler, and an artist, I have noticed a relationship between remodeling work and composing a pictorial image. Whether helping to design a construction project or creating a composition on paper, I use the same thought processes, which involve the organization of form and space. One of my best paintings, Golden Badlands, provided a pivotal turn in my process of painting with watercolor. The challenge in this painting revolved around organizing the tremendous amount of detail into one unified visual statement. The painting was produced in sections, much like a puzzle. Each section contained different watercolor techniques, such as multiple washes, dry brushing, linear brush strokes, and pixelated dots of color. The detailed sections were unified by lifting out areas of paint with a wet brush and by multiple light-colored washes. Kent did a term as the Michigan Watercolor Society travel chair and says he enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah,
That's beautiful, Kent.
yeah. It was. I think he got best of show at the Saginaw show. I think it was one of those. Great work. Denise Willing Bohr from Fenton. I received my Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree from University of Michigan School of Art. Upon graduation, I worked for several companies doing graphic design and illustration on the East Coast. I've taught graphic design and painting at the college, regional, and local level. Helping a student grow as an artist is very rewarding. Along my journey, I wanted to interact with other watercolor artists and looked up watercolor associations in Michigan and found the Michigan Watercolor Society. I joined NWCS, went to a meeting, and immediately joined the board as exhibition chair, of which I served 2 terms. I was very honored to step up and serve a term as MWCS president. While still president of MWCS, I was juried into the National Watercolor Society and became a signature member. Shortly after I was asked to join their board, I served as the awards chair for 3 years and stepped up to become president in January of 2020. MWCS has taught and given me so much professionally and personally. I'm very honored to be a member of the Michigan Watercolor Society. I had a hard time choosing one painting to include. All my paintings have been shown in our MWCS exhibition and are a reflection of me and my artistic and personal journey. I chose Sundown because it was a painting from the soul. When my brother passed away suddenly, I felt I could reach him in the beauty of each sunrise and sunset. Thank you, Denise. And Denise is the one that talked me into becoming president, so thank you. Judith Zalo from Bloomfield Hills. I graduated cum laude in the UK with a major in ceramics. I was a potter studying under Derek Clarkston, an inspiring mentor. Spent 20 years as a teacher. I returned to art some 20 years later in the US on a friend's suggestion that I would like watercolor, and it was instant love. It can reward with a message of pure magic, color, and transparency. As I see it, it is a delicate balance of water and pigment. The artist holds that wand and weaves the story. At its best, the painting communicates the story and the viewer responds. I submitted this work not because it was my best, but because it best conveyed the feelings I put into it. I am deeply gratified for my experience working with MWCS board. I am humbled to be working with a common cause with magnificent artists, and I've learned so much from all of them. The MWCS mission to promote and sustain the art of watercolor is one I strongly believe in. I am enthusiastic in my work as the travel chair, arranging a program of host venues for the award winners from the annual exhibitions. Some years this could be challenging, wanting to spread the show through Michigan as much as possible, but bound by the constraints of venue availability and the fluctuating economy. Curators and exhibition directors are lovely to work with. However, and I enjoyed meeting so many people who were enthusiastic about art. Many are artists themselves, and I enjoyed the benefit of seeing some great conversations that I made friends along the way. I also stood in as a social chair, arranged meeting details, refreshments, and awards chair, looking for donations to the awards funds during my time on the board, and enjoyed these positions too. Suffice to say that when I retired, I missed the board meetings. I missed MWCS, every success in their mission as they continue to thrive. Thank you, Judith. Lori Zerbalik, Grosse Pointe. Last but not least, my work reflects my view of a challenging world, the subject matter referring to nature, foliage, trees that I have sketched. Paint from life for my reference drawings. My compositions are deliberate, generally worked out in my sketchbook, revolving around a specific concept or idea. I'm especially fond of watercolor because of the fluidity of the mark I can make. I briefly attended the Center for Creative Studies as a paint major. I have taken classes or independent studies at the Canoga Water Media Workshops in North Carolina. I've served the Michigan Watercolor Society as president, exhibition chair, graphics chair, and the Detroit Society of Women Painters and Sculptors as a recording secretary. I chose View of the Garden in late summer for this exhibition, as it is the best example of what I considered my signature style. Many individual marks, grids, strong colors, organic shapes relating to nature with a sense of mystery. Thank you, Lori. So I hope that was beneficial for you to understand these artists a little bit better. But before we close this meeting, I want to say that there's probably many artists that should be on this list or some way being recognized. And as the board, we talked about the Lifetime Achievement Award. And that's going to be something that, if you can see the slide here, it's basically something that we established this year. And it's for someone to be recognized for achieving watercolor media over many years, honored. It's especially honors contributions to the mission and goals of Michigan Watercolor Society to promote a strong awareness and interest in watercolor and high standards. And this award is designed to honor those people that didn't regularly exhibit in the annual exhibition, but who continue to have an impact in the art world through education, volunteerism, and advocacy. Nominees for a lifetime achievement should be current members in good standing. Nominees for the award can be made by any MWCS member. No self-nominations will be considered, and you can send these to Catherine Hera for us to review as a board. And with that, I want to thank Vicki for helping me out. I could not have done this myself, and I hope this was worthwhile, so thank you. And that is the end of our presentation.
Thanks, Rocky.
You bet.
Thank you.
Nice seeing all of you.
You bet.
It was outstanding.
Good.